So alphabetically, but also because we expect a lot of Australian companies to be in this webinar today, we'll start with Australia first. Where we are is in terms of the adoption of those standards, it looks like we had a exposure draft that came out and that had a consultation around there. And that exposure draft was really focused on just localizing these standards. So taking those ISSB standards and making them own to Australia under the Australian Sustainability Reporting Standards, the ASRS. Initially, it was really focused about kind of stripping down the IFRS S1 and only making it about climate, and then bringing S2 in as well as a climate standard. There was a lot of pushback because what we find is that if you really localize international standards too much, they're no longer standardized and comparable. So if you take that work that was done globally and really kind of pull it apart and do too much with it, when companies report on it, then you can't compare it to other jurisdictions anymore. So what we are today, it looks like that we'll implement IFRS S2, like the ASRS S2 climate standard, hopefully with not too many modifications. And we'll implement in Australia IFRS S1 as ASRS S1. But the key difference is that the climate standard S2 will be mandatory from the start, whereas S1, for the time being, it looks like it will be voluntary. There's a close interaction between S1 and S2. It doesn't mean you can't do them separately, but it was always intended as one, as a broad-based starting point, and then any more topic-based standards like S2 is on climate, S3 might be on another topic, and S4, etc., that are all kind of based as well on S1, which requires you to do that materiality assessment and work out what's important. So for now in Australia, it looks like that is the approach. The actual standards will hopefully be issued this month. It looked like they were on the timeline to be issued before the end of August. So any day now, we hope to see what the final standards look like. We'll see that the reporting entities require large entities that have to prepare and lodge under the Chapter 2M of the Corporation Act. So that includes listed and unlisted companies, financial institutions, registrable superannuation entities, and investment schemes. What is excluded for now is really small. There's certain thresholds, really small, kind of small, medium enterprises. It just depends if you fall under the threshold, and entities exempt from lodging financial reports or AC&C registered. Again, really make sure, there's a lot of detail about this already, that you look for your specific situation as well, what applies to your business and what the timeline is. There will be staggered implementation with a phase-in from the 1st of January 2025. At least that is what it looks like. So it will be over a 4-year period to phase in 3 groups. So you might, if you're a small business, you might fall outside of that group. Keep in mind, even if you fall outside of this, is that companies that have to do this, have to do climate reporting, they might actually come back to you and ask you questions about, you're my supply chain, I need some climate related information from you. So that could happen. So what we generally suggest is that even if you're not directly kind of touched by this legislation, start early, because you might get stakeholders or people in your overall value chain that ask you for information. And we'll see that from an insurance point of view, reasonable assurance on all climate related disclosures, including scope 3 from the 4th year of reporting. That is what the situation looks like right now. That's why I put on the S1 in that column a question mark. It is there voluntary initially. I wouldn't be surprised that at some point it becomes mandated as well, but we'll have to see if and when that might happen. But it is really good practice to do that as well. So it's more recommended at this point than mandated.